Lynette's murder investigation was convoluted and complex, with several suspects named over the years, and ultimately resulted in the wrongful conviction of the Cardiff Three. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the most disturbing case of Lynette White, exploring the investigation and the wrongful conviction, and reveal the real killer. Stick around to find out how DNA profiling finally solved this tragic case. The case of Lynette White is a 15-year-old cold case that has finally been solved. Lynette was a young woman from Cardiff, Wales who dropped out of school and started working as a prostitute when she was 14 to make ends meet. She was popular and pretty and was probably the most visible prostitute working in Cardiff at the time. She was working to support her boyfriend's cocaine addiction and earned £100 per night. On February 9, 1988, Lynette disappeared, and 5 days later the police found her dead in her apartment. She was due to appear as a witness for 2 prosecution trials when she disappeared. During the investigation, the police found a zoospermic semen in her vagina and on her underwear, which belonged to someone else. There were also 2 different blood types found on Lynette, her own blood and an AB blood type that did not belong to her. Witnesses told the police that they saw a man looking distressed in the area where Lynette's body was found on James Street. The suspicious man, described as a white male approximately 5'8" to 5'10" and in his mid-30s, became the primary focus of the investigation. Police looked into Lynette's boyfriend, Stephen Miller, as the partner of a murder victim is usually the first obvious suspect. But Miller was released later because his blood type didn't match the one found on Lynette. Francine Cordell and his mother were also investigated because Lynette was supposed to appear as a witness against Cordell in court, but they were eliminated as suspects because their blood didn't match the AB blood type found on Lynette. The investigation took years, and the police couldn't find the killer. It was only in 2003 that the case was finally solved. DNA profiling techniques had advanced, and the police were able to identify the real killer, Jeffrey Gaffour. Gaffour had confessed to the murder in 2003, and his DNA matched the semen found on Lynette. He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Lynette White. The case of Lynette White's murder in 1988 was a complex and convoluted investigation that lasted over a year. The police initially had few leads and suspects, with very little information about the case against Cordell or the other case that Lynette was set to give evidence in. However, one suspect who caught the investigators' interest was Mr. X, a sex offender and pedophile who lived close to James Street. Mr. X admitted to paying Lynette for sex in the past but was eliminated from the investigation through a DNA test. The investigation then relied on statements gathered from door-to-door inquiries. Several suspects were implicated, including Gourmet and Atkins, who gave statements implicating each other, but with 4 different accounts that were not taken seriously. Ronnie Williams, a police informant, gave an account implicating his common-law brother-in-law, Yosef Abdullahi. However, investigators dismissed the account due to the known animosity between the two. Leanne Valdet, who reported Lynette's disappearance on the day she died, was also suspected and questioned. The police visited her daily, and under pressure, she named Miller and Abdullahi as the killers. Violet Purum, a secretary at the Cardiff Yacht Club, claimed that on February 14th, while driving home from the club at about 1:30 a.m., she saw 4 excited black males outside the building where Lynette was killed. Angela Sala, who was mildly mentally disabled, gave a statement that she saw several men, including Miller, John, Rashid, Ronnie Acton, John's cousin Tony Paris, and Tony Brace outside 7 James Street on the day Lynette was murdered. Gourmet and Adkins gave new statements on the same day with Salah saying they also saw a group of men, including Ronnie and Abdullahi. Saylor also gave another statement that she heard a scream from Lynette's flat and rushed there with Valde. Coincidentally, on the same day, Valde also told the police that she went to the flat after she heard Lynette scream and met Miller, Abdullahi, Rani, Akti, Miller's brother, and an unarmed mixed-race man. Salah had an AB blood type, and police insisted that her blood was found on Lynette's socks. She then gave a new statement that she was part of the killing together with Valde and the other man. After 307 denials, Miller confessed to killing Lynette and implicated the other men named, leading to the arrest of all the men allegedly involved in the murder on December 7, 1988. The police arrested Stephen and Tony Miller, Yusuf Abdullahi, Rani Akti, Rashid Omar, and Martin Tucker. On December 9, 1988, John Akti and Tony Paris were also arrested. Their trial began on October 5, 1989 at Swansea Crown Court and lasted 197 days, making it the longest murder trial in British legal history. Ronnie and John Akti were acquitted of the murder, while Tony Paris, Stephen Miller, and Yusuf Abdullahi were found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, becoming known as the Cardiff Three. The convictions of the Cardiff Three were met with doubts and questions, leading to a campaign by friends and families to overturn them, with massive support in television documentaries in 1992. The case remains a tragic and controversial one, highlighting the complexities and challenges of criminal investigations and legal proceedings. In December 1992, the Cardiff Three appeal was heard by the Court of Appeal. Lord Taylor declared their convictions unsafe and unsatisfactory, stating that Miller had been bullied during interrogation, rendering the truthfulness of his admission irrelevant. This left the question of who murdered Lynette White unanswered, as the Cardiff Three's exoneration implied that the real perpetrator was still at large. 8 years later, the case was reopened and assigned to Professor Dave Barkley and Chief Superintendent Kevin O'Neill. While examining old crime scene photographs, Professor Barkley noticed a large drop of blood on the wallpaper believed to have been thrown from a knife during the crime. Upon searching the old wallpaper evidence, they found that the only missing piece of wallpaper was the one containing the blood stain. The forensic team also found traces of blood on a piece of cellophane wrapper from a cigarette pack, leading to the suspect being dubbed Cellophane Man. The forensic team, led by Angela Gallup, attempted to obtain a DNA profile, but it was not found in any of the 140 police databases. Using familial DNA searching, a partial match was eventually made with the profile of a 14-year-old boy who was known to the police. However, it was soon discovered that he wasn't even born when the incident occurred. The case was 15 years old at this point, but the police had to visit the boy's house. Upon arrival, they were told that the boy's father was dead, but he had an uncle named Jeffrey Gadford. On February 26, 2003, detectives arrived at Jeffrey's house, a semi-detached house in the village of Hanharan, but no one was home. Cardiff Three's appeal exposed a flawed justice system, but the real perpetrator of Lynette White's murder remained unknown. It took years of forensic investigation and familial DNA searching to uncover a suspect, but it remains to be seen whether Jeffrey Gaffer is, in fact, the elusive Cellophane Man. On the following day, the police visited Jeffrey's workplace, an office block in Cardiff city centre where he worked as a security guard. They explained to him why they were there, and Jeffrey responded that he thought they had already caught the culprit. The police then asked Jeffrey to provide a mouth swab, which he complied with immediately. The swab revealed that Jeffrey was the Cellophane Man, and the Chief Superintendent Kevin O'Neill was determined to do things right this time. He put a surveillance team on Jeffrey while making preparations for the interview. Although Chief O'Neill planned to monitor Jeffrey for an entire week, Jeffrey made a crazy move on February 28, 2003. The surveillance team observed him buying 3 packets of paracetamol at a garage. When the police arrived at Jeffrey's house, he had already taken about 62 paracetamols. Despite denying ever taking the tablets, Jeffrey confessed to killing Lynette White, saying that he had been waiting for this for 15 years, and that he deserved whatever punishment awaited him. He was taken to the hospital where he initially refused to be treated but eventually agreed to take an antidote and recovered a few days later. In July 2003, Jeffrey pleaded guilty to Lynette White's murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum tariff of 12 years and 8 months. His barristers claim that Jeffrey killed Lynette for over 30 pounds of sex, stating that Jeffrey wanted his money back when he changed his mind. In February 2007, Adkins, Sala, Velde, and Gromick were charged with perjury. Sala, Velden, and Gromick were found guilty and sentenced to 18 months imprisonment each, while Adkins was exempt because it was believed that he had been coerced to admit to false accounts. As we conclude this video, the case of Lynette White serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of violence against women and the importance of justice for victims and their families. Despite the many twists and turns in this complex case, it is heartening to know that justice has finally been served, and the true killer, Jeffrey Goffer, has been held accountable for his actions. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.